New verified video circulating on social media shows houses destroyed in northern Ukraine overnight. Another shows tanks firing in the distance close to where buses were evacuating civilians today. Let's bring in ABC News contributors, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Mick Mulroy and former CIA Station Chief Daryl Blocker for more on this. Mick, I'd like to start with you. Ukrainian officials say at least 21 civilians, including 2 children, were killed by a Russian airstrike in a city near the Russian border overnight. So what do you make of that? Is this a strategy by the Russians?
Unfortunately, Diane, it is. And we've seen this in many other conflicts, to include Syria and Chechnya. When the Russians fail militarily, which they are doing right now, they have a stalled operation by every point of view. They often resort to direct attacks against civilians. And we're seeing that across the Ukraine. And it's causing a devastating effect on the civilian population. And they need to be held accountable. They need to be investigations that identify who ordered these attacks, and they will be held accountable.
Now, Daryl, the Russian Defense Ministry is criticizing Ukrainian officials for not allowing civilians to evacuate to Russia, saying that checkpoints on Ukraine's western borders weren't prepared to receive refugees. Why does the Kremlin seem to want Ukrainians to evacuate into Russia so badly?
Well, that just gives them a bargaining piece for holding Ukrainian citizens hostage once they reach the Russian territory. And we understand that they have families on both sides of the border, but allowing the Ukrainians to enter is, to them, an opening to the Russians. But to the Ukrainians, it's a slap in the face because they launched this invasion and they're being accepted into Poland, into Latvia, into a lot of other different countries. So they don't want to go into Russia, and Russia is trying to push them into the position of basically sending hostages into Russian territory.
And Mick, the Biden administration is considering backfilling Poland's Air Force with American fighter jets if Poland decides to send Russian-made fighter jets to Ukraine. So what impact could that have? Does it risk pulling the U.S. into a larger conflict?
So it can have a significant impact. These are MiG-29s. The Ukrainians know how to fly them. They could use them to further disrupt the Russian supply lines, which has already challenged it up. They could use them in close air support for their own offensive operation. So they could be a game changer. And quite frankly, as being somebody who has been on the ground in the ground fight, just having them above changes the scenario. It is an incredible motivational boost. So I hope that that is available and Poland does provide them. Yes, you are correct. It does make the United States and NATO more involved in this conflict. But I think we should do everything we can do to help the Ukrainians, short of trying to impose this no-fly zone, of which has been talked about so much, because that would essentially put the United States into the conflict immediately. This is not asking too much of NATO. I think we should do it. I think it's very doable, but it is up to Poland, who is a sovereign country, to make that decision.
And I want to bring that point to Daryl, because the House Intelligence Committee is holding a hearing on worldwide threats. And CIA Director Bill Burns testified that Putin is angry and frustrated by what's happening in Ukraine, and that he's, quote, likely to double down and try to grind down the Ukrainian military with no regard for civilian casualties. They also talk about a larger threat to other countries. So what do you think in terms of how we navigate all of these different moving pieces?
Well, I'm confident that the intelligence assessments over many years has shown exactly what Putin's intentions are. I'm confident that the analysts from the DIA, from CIA, and from their counterparts in NATO are pouring through what exactly Putin and his inner circle have said about expansion. They have no regard for life. You have essentially 3 of the top 5 inner circle of Putin are all intelligence officers with minimal military experience, including the defense minister. So they are overreacting, but they're doing it in a very calculating way. So this national assessment is something that's done, annually, and Putin is operating out of his comfort zone. He is used to driving the narrative, and now he's having to respond. And I'm sure he is very frustrated, and possibly there'll be some people being fired in the near term if things don't change.
And Mick, the director of national intelligence, testified that Russia's invasion has gone according to expectations, except, and this is a big except, for Ukraine's resistance, which has deprived Russia of the quick military victory that it expected, and it allowed U.S. and NATO to now provide meaningful aid to Ukraine. How significant is that?
So it's an intangible in combat, that absolute will to fight, which can't be calculated prior to the fight. It can only be shown in combat. And I think that's why you saw so many military analysts thinking that this was going to go much quicker and that Russia would be able to take key terrain earlier than they have. And right now, they've completely stalled. Part of it is because the Russian military is not as competent as we thought. But to your point of your question, Diane, the Ukrainian people, the army and the actual civilians that are fighting have really shown a tenacity that people did not expect. And that is something that Putin didn't calculate and something he's having to take into his decisions going forward now.
All right, Mick Mulroy, Darrell Blocker, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.